Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Bench Press and Business. Today's guest began his journey in the health and fitness industry way back in 2002, following a successful football spell, winning 50 caps for Wales and a Youth Premier League title with Blackburn Rovers. Working for big commercial operators, including Fitness First, DW Sports, now operating as a regional manager for Pure Gym. He also spent a 3-year period opening clubs and sharpening his multi-site management toolkit on the sunny shores of the Middle East, all whilst clocking up a list of achievements and milestones longer than both of my arms put together. Most recently, and having experience working as a behavioural change specialist, he's ignited a passion for life coaching and mindset development and works closely with people to unlock their potential. A close friend and mentor, I'll give you Mr. Ben Chamberlain. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Delighted to join you.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. All okay? Surviving lockdown? How's things going?
Really well, mate. Yeah, I mean, it's turning into positives, isn't it? So managing to get a bit more running in, preparing for a half marathon. Why, I don't know. Time spent with the little one, as we mentioned earlier. We've got 5-month-old and time on the business as well. So I've been busy, really enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Just having that chance sometimes to, cause I think we've said it a few times now. It's tough when you've got other fingers in pies and you've got the day job and you're committed fully to getting out of that day job what you need to and moving it forwards, and then still trying to almost spin plates with the other stuff you're trying to develop alongside. It can be tough, but as you said there, it's nice to get the positives of a bit of time with family and a bit of time to grow what you want to grow as well.
100%. Yeah, no, I think at the beginning, being in circumstances we've not been in before, it was a bit challenging, but you just have to get yourself into that rhythm and routine, don't you? And once you find that and you find your flow and something that you're passionate about, the rest fits in. And that's what I've managed to do, and I'm sure others have.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing with it is, it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. You mentioned it there. It's unprecedented times for a lot of people. Yeah. So how people even approach that and come into it and come out the other side is going to be quite an interesting one, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's the risk, is coming out the other side and how, again, the world's going to change, isn't it? How we do things, how we operate, whatever aspect of our lives now is going to be different for quite a considerable amount of time. And it's kind of preparing ourselves mentally for that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So lots and lots for us to go through. Like we've mentioned there with the intro, sounds like you've managed to clock up quite a lot over the last few years. But yeah, we'll start with that football career Martin mentioned just before we came on. So if you can talk us through that. You mentioned you felt it was a little bit shorter than you would have liked, but go for it.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough that I think, how old would I have been? About 14 or 15. I was at Manchester City at 13 to 14. Everton prior to that, and then I played a little bit for Chester and Wrexham locally. Managed to get into Flintshire Schoolboys during that time, which obviously you got the likes of Ian Rush, Gary Speed, Michael Owen, Neville Southall that all came through that. And then when I was around about 15, that was when the pinch point came where I actually at the time had 13 Premier League clubs come in for me, and ended up following the pound sign, sadly, and signing for Blackburn Rovers, which, looking back on it, don't regret anything. Absolutely loved my time there, but was so happy at Manchester City. I was playing the football of my life. They told me how highly they thought of me. But unfortunately, I decided to make the move, and probably, if I'm being completely honest, followed the pound signs a little bit. And unfortunately, because of the money behind Blackburn, I realised that I was a small fish in a big pond and trying to break through. I remember one time I was just slowly breaking through. Or what I thought I was breaking through. I got to play in the reserves with the likes of Simon Grace and Damien Duff and people like that. And I realised that I was on the bench for that game, looked at the full 11 in the reserves, and they were all full internationals.
Wow.
And I just thought, okay, it's probably not going to happen here if it does at all. Had some amazing moments in my career. Managed to break into the Wales squad. I think it was around under 15s, played in the triangular tournament on Sky 2 years on the run. So I played the year above, and then for my year, and the highest I got was Wales under 21s. And at the same time, trying to break through into the Rovers team, which obviously was difficult. There were times where you'd play a training match with the first team. You'd be coached by the likes of Graham Souness, Brian Kidd, Mark Hughes, people like that we had at the time. And you're thinking, I must be getting quite close here. Am I doing all right? But for some reason, you just wouldn't get called back in again or whatever. So yeah, it was difficult. And as I'm sure a lot will say, unless they've gone on to make it, that the competition for places and positions, especially when you want to be a midfielder, the amount of times I was told, why don't you try fullback? You've got this skill set. And I was just so stubborn as an 18-year-old lad that I wouldn't move. I wanted to be a midfielder. And you know what? I could have taught myself out of a career. If I'd have been a fullback, who knows? But I wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
It may have been a bit different as well, mate, because now they're playing all sorts of formations, whereas back then it was just straight up 4-4-2, wasn't it? So if you're a centre midfielder, you would have had more opportunity to play in a 3-5-2 or a 4-3-3 or something like that. So I was exactly the same as you, mate. Very stubborn when it comes to positional and wanting to play where I wanted to play. So I would hold that against you too much. From that, do you reckon that because you've gone into the fitness game, was that the starting point? Do you reckon getting into football?
Do you mean so the transition from football into the health? Yeah. So I think I managed to do a sports science BTEC when I was there. They gave us day release. Funnily enough, we were in the same class as some of the Burnley lads when we were going to we had a private tutor. And I think naturally, as you're doing this and you're going through it, and then you find that you're probably not going to quite make it, you naturally fall into health and fitness. I think a lot of people have done that. Ex-footballers have gone into it. If they haven't gone on and had careers, they've naturally just fallen into it. And I remember my first job was as a fitness instructor at my local council. On about 20-25 hours a week, which was perfect because I was still adamant I was going to have a career in football, and it meant I could use the gym for free to get back into the game. And obviously didn't quite happen or work out, but I think it just naturally sets you up. You're doing a qualification anyway to make sure that if it doesn't work out, you come out with something. And Blackburn Rovers were brilliant at that. You know, the academy was fantastic at encouraging us to learn. If we didn't turn up for college, then the chances are we might not play on a Saturday. I mean, that was how it was. You had to go and educate yourself. And you know what? Thankfully, I'm glad they made it that way.
Do you think, was there anything really that stands out in your mind? Obviously, you mentioned there the transition from football and almost having that approach of I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna be having a career in football. Was there anything that really stands out to you when you've transitioned from that environment and that arena, thinking this is what I'm going to do, into health and fitness? Was there anything really that you found tough, or any big lessons that you got from that?
First of all, I mean, you imagine, I mean, I'm from a little town in North Wales, right? Funnily enough, where Michael Owen's from. And I was, at a young age, I was built up to be the next best thing not long after him. So you're in the paper, you know, every other couple of weeks. Every time you go out, you felt like a little bit of a celeb. Honestly, I know it sounds dramatic, but it did feel that way. I mean, you're on Sky 1 minute playing for Wales, and then you're in your, you know, at the age of 17 and 18 and 19, you're starting to go out a little bit more. I'd go to the pub, but I'd be the only one drinking Coke. So I stood out like a mile. People would be coming up to you that you knew of, but you'd never ever spoken to before. All of a sudden, one day, boom, it's gone. And I suppose the biggest thing for me was it took me probably 4 or 5 years to get over that I wasn't going to make it. I didn't hardly watch a game of football. I missed Euro Championships. I missed World Cups. I missed Premier League games. I didn't care. I fell out of love with it. I was watching people on the TV that I played against, done well against, and I'll be honest, I was bitter because they went on and had careers, and I thought, the last time I played against you 2 years ago, I did well against you, and I'm sat here. All of a sudden, you're a fitness instructor cleaning toilets, cleaning showers, and I felt like, you know, as a first-year apprentice in football, when you're cleaning the lads' boots, you're cleaning the changing rooms, etc., as part of your YTS. I felt like I was doing my apprenticeship again in the health and fitness industry. And so that bitterness set in. I didn't want to watch football, be around it. What it did do was I think they promised my mum and dad, I'll never forget the day we signed, you'll be handing us over a boy, but we will hand you back a man. And that's one thing that they did. I mean, at 15, 2 weeks after my last exam, I was living away from my parents in Blackburn for 4 years. So you very quickly had to learn. It felt a little bit like military, which was good. I mean, if you didn't make your bed, you had to go back up and make it. All that kind of stuff. It was all laid out, breakfast, lunch, and all of a sudden, I got to look after myself. So it was quite challenging. I would say from a mindset perspective, I was ahead of most of my friends and people around me in the sense that, I had to grow up a lot quicker. But at the same time, I'm in the real world now, and this is what work is. And it was quite an eye-opener, quite a shock, but mental toughness, etc., I would say that of what I learned about myself during that time, they did develop and coach us and make us young men rather than just, you didn't make it in football, see you later. So I was quite fortunate in that aspect.
Yeah, you don't necessarily always hear that side of things. You do tend to come across players that come out of academies and almost fall out of love, not just with the game, but with life, and they don't necessarily know how to approach that or what to do because they have had these experiences and these people that have looked after them and put them in a position where they've got access to whatever it is they need to be the best version of themselves. And then, as you've mentioned there, you're all of a sudden now in this big wide world where you've got to look after yourself. How did you find then working with other people that hadn't been from that background? So obviously mentioned they're working in a leisure centre. How was that for you? Bit of a change, or?
Yeah, quite strange at first, and really having to, looking back now, I didn't realise at the time, but having to adapt who I was as well, because I mean, some of the things you would see and hear, I mean, you were around people that, with no disrespect at times, certain people weren't as ambitious, weren't as hungry, didn't have any sort of drive to want to move forward in a job or whatever it might be, and again weren't as ambitious, and I kind of struggled to be around that. And I asked myself, is this the right setting for me? As you know, you want to be around people that are like-minded, that you're drawn to because you've got that same hunger, passion, desire, whatever it might be. And that was quite a wake-up call. I was used to being around 20-odd football lads who all wanted to be the best. And then all of a sudden, I'm around people that, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing right now. And I wasn't happy earning minimum wage, 20 hours a week. I wanted more for myself. And so I think that was the big transition, but also filled me with a little bit of confidence that actually I'm stronger than an awful lot of people mentally. Although I've fallen out of love with the game, I've still got a lot to offer. And so again, I thank Blackburn for that, really, because I could have come out of that with a completely different mindset. And they really installed that in me. So yeah, I suppose that was the biggest challenge, working with people I've always loved. And this, not to skip the gun and going on to coaching, but you almost realise now, looking back, that you've been coaching pretty much since I've come out of football, because if people did have those moments, I'd be coaching them at 21, 22. You just don't realise it.
Yeah.
You're giving them that little bit of a pep talk, and so you're almost coaching people back then, which you look back now and you go, actually, I've been doing this quite a while.
Yeah. Wow. So it's almost like you've brought that with you from being at Blackburn and from being around, because when you're on the pitch, you're always having to communicate and pull people in, or you might have to tuck your left back in, or however that might look. There's that communication element in there, isn't there? Do you think maybe more so for people, for young people growing up, that it's probably quite a big thing to get them into those sorts of environments and have them around those skill sets from early?
100%. I mean, like I say, we went in a boy and we came out a man. And I think you have to be very fortunate with the coach you had. I mean, I had Robert Kelly, who, was absolutely amazing coach. He played the game himself. He unfortunately had to retire due to a back injury. he was a journalist for a little bit, and now he's coaching. I forget the team he's at now, alongside Joey Barton.
Okay.
He's had an amazing career. He managed Leicester City in the Premier League for a while. So I was very fortunate. He's a very well educated man, and not only through football and strategy and tactics, but through how to grow up as a man that you want to be. He really helped us. And we're still on a WhatsApp group. I mean, we tried to meet once a year, all the Rovers lads that won that title 20 years ago. We tried to meet once a year, and every single one of them in some form are doing so well and successful. And honestly, I've got to say that isn't just by luck. I think that's a lot of it is down to that education we had at Blackburn Rovers.
Amazing. Yeah, it's clearly no secret, if it's been spread across the entire team, that there's got to be something in that, hasn't there? It's not just you've all been fortunate. It can't be that consistent across a bunch of people and it not be down to that, I suppose, really.
No, exactly. I think that would have played a huge part in it for sure.
Cool. Okay, so football, we've now moved you into the working world. You're working in your local leisure centre. Just talk us through how some of those steps went then. So we mentioned earlier that you've worked for some really big commercial operators and operators that have been, especially two of those operators being towards the top end of the industry at points. Just talk us through how you managed to work with those, how you came about working for those companies, and some of those success stories that you've got longer than both my arms.
Yeah, so like I say, my first one was the fitness instructor at my local council gym, and then I naturally just fell into personal training. Didn't know an awful lot about it as I was getting more qualified, level 2, level 3 and so on. And then a job came up at a privately owned gym closer to where I lived, and I decided, you know what, it's probably about the right time to start looking into what PT looks like. I moved over. I was doing fitness instructor hours and working my PT around it, comfortably doing 60 hours a week, something along those lines, because I went full time when I moved. It was going well. I was very happy with what I was earning. I was the only one there doing PT and offering PT in a small team. And so I was quite fortunate in that aspect that there was no real competition as such. It was a brand new gym. I helped launch it. So I got a little bit of experience very early in my 20s at pre-sale, albeit not on the scale that I've been used to thereafter. But yeah, really, really interesting. And then I started to say, right, I want to really get into the corporate world. And then I joined Fitness First, where I went in as a self-employed PT, took a chunk of my business with me about 15 miles away. Obviously, those that didn't want to travel didn't come with me at the time, but managed to build a successful business there. And within 2 months was made fitness manager after applying for it. So, or health and fitness manager, HFM as it was at the time, where you were running the group exercise aspect of it with your group exercise manager reporting into you. And you were one of the line managers reporting into the GM. So at the time we had, I think, around about 3 PTs. I managed to take it within the first 6 months up to around about 7 or 8 PTs. We hadn't hit, since the club had been open, any sort of PT rent budget or anything along those lines. I don't know if you recall, but back in the day, we had a sliding scale to try and encourage you to get more clients as your rent increased. And I just literally honed in on that aspect. I made the sliding scale just my be-all, and made sure that as soon as that new PT came in, I spent as much time as I could possibly with them out on that gym floor, literally showing them exactly what I've done to build my business. Now, got nowhere near the knowledge or experience or any sort of models to work from at this point. I'm 23, 24 years of age, come out of football, and I literally think, looking back, I relied on my people skills, being personable, being approachable, smiling quite a lot, and just being a presence really out on the floor. And I spoke to people. And looking back now, I mean, we've got all these sales funnels and lead generation tools, and I didn't know I was doing that. That kind of just came naturally to me. I wasn't the best PT in the world, but I made people laugh. I made sure the sessions were fun. I made sure there was a huge variation. And I think a lot of my PTs observed, watched me, took it from me. I managed to get that buy-in pretty much immediately. And that kind of just took my manager career off. I started to get told, you know what, you're a really good manager. I remember people saying that too, you're a really good manager. And I was thinking, oh, I didn't even think if I was good at it or not. I just knew I loved it. And then I remember at Fitness First, I had a stint of around about 3 months where my, I think manager went on maternity leave. And I was asked to just step in with no extra pay, but just be acting GM. Started to learn the sales aspect, because as we know, Fitness First are sales monsters. They, probably still are today. And she came back eventually from maternity, and there was no route forward. The GMs were going nowhere. There were a good crop of GMs who were highly thought of. So I went over and worked in a spa as a commercial spa manager, looking after 12 spa therapists, all ladies, 12 spa therapist rooms, products that I never in a million years thought I would have ever tried, tested, and been selling. And
is that the secret to looking so young? Is that what it is?
There was nothing for your hair, so unfortunately there was no Miracle Grow sold. But so that's where that led. What I did in that time was, all of a sudden now I'm wearing a shirt, I'm wearing a tie, I'm wearing pants, I'm a commercial manager. I learned so much in that time about analysing data, looking at patterns, all that kind of thing, really, where I had a 6-week crash course with a consultant. Again, very fortunate, but I believe you make your own luck if you're looking for it. Unfortunately, after around about a year, it was never, although it was a £13 million spa, it had opened just in the recession, 2007, 8, 9, I think it was. And I was just never going to have a passion for that, although it had a gym attached. And then the opportunity came up to my first GM role around about 27, 28 with DW Sports, where I went over and, again, different, very different, culturally very different. A massive learning curve for me about how I went about things there, and also how I was managed, which was really important. I took the things that I thought were really good and took the things that I thought weren't so good, that I didn't want to revisit again, shall we say. And then, I came out of the industry after that, after being made to feel that I wasn't good enough.
You know, during that time and all that period that you were just talking about, did your coaching style change, or did it remain the same?
Yes, it did. I think a little bit more, working with 12 ladies, and being the only guy in that department was a challenge in itself. I think that really helped me to start to learn again, probably not realizing, but I had to be forced into learning what emotional intelligence was and what it was all about, and probably doing that without even realizing what I was learning about myself a little bit more, because, some of the women would come in, they'd knock on the door, can I have a chat, close the door, and they'd be very open, very honest about how they were feeling. Whereas, as we know, if it's a fella, especially back then, they're not going to talk about what it is that's bothering them. They'll walk around with their face like a smack backside all day, but there's something really bothering them. Whereas I actually found it easier sitting down when the women were coming in, or the ladies were coming in, the therapists telling me, this is how I'm feeling, this has happened outside of work, and I was actually finding it easy because I kind of wanted to coach and help. But I suppose I had to adapt a little bit there compared to Fitness First, where it's predominantly male PTs back then, where I could be maybe a little bit more direct, a little bit more honest. They appreciated that, they wanted that, whereas I had to learn a little bit more about how I was going about delivering a message, maybe in the spa role. So that's one big thing I would say that was important. And also, I didn't know how a spa worked. I had no idea. I was learning. They knew more than me. And so one thing I think that created buy-in was, look, you know the situation, you know that you know more than me. Show me how this system works. Show me how this treatment works. If I buy this product off you, what can I expect to get? because I had to sell it as well. So yeah, if you want any tips on beauty products, then
I think I need them, to be fair.
Would you say that experience opened your eyes up a little bit more so to, because you mentioned there, and it's something that gets lost, I feel personally quite often when you're working with people in the work setting, you tend to not necessarily always think about what's going on outside of work. How's that impacting their life, and how's that impacting their manner and performance and the way that they come and conduct themselves inside of work? Do you think that opened your eyes up a little bit more so to that, having a group of ladies that were able to speak to you about that sort of stuff, versus in the past maybe having PTs that wouldn't open up, or not necessarily not open up, but wouldn't be as open or as forthcoming with that sort of information?
100%. I mean, you know, I was from a football background where at halftime you told you this and that if you're not performing. I mean, that was my pep talk, you know, or you're getting a hell of a lot of stick off the lads if you don't perform, or if you're going through a bad patch in games. I mean, nobody's shy about telling you that, you know, if you've missed an open goal or whatever it might be, if you score an own goal, I don't know, if you've just had a bit of a shocker, people are brutally honest with you, and they'll wind you up to a point where, looking back, really, you had to be so mentally tough to go out and play your next game. And you don't really understand at the time that you know how mentally tough you are, and you just have to wipe your memory clean and go out. Then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, with no real big education or mentorship, I'm managing 12 ladies. So yeah, I think you know, you go back now, and going a little bit deeper here, but you're conditioned from such a young age. You know, and there was one thing I'll always remember was my parents. You remain humble, number one, but number two, you always respect women, which was absolutely huge. And I think that probably helped along the way as well, going into that environment that I didn't have a clue about. And just really appreciate and listen to those people coming up to me with issues and problems. Whereas before, if you were a footballer talking about that, I mean, the lads would have laughed at you. So yeah. I had to very, very quickly change who I was, grow up even more so. And it definitely challenged me and pushed me out of my comfort zone. But what an amazing learning curve it was, because now I'm able to deal with blokes, and not that the gender, you know, but back then I think it was slightly different. You're dealing with different personalities rather than gender, but there is a tendency, and especially back then, where if as a guy you've got 12 ladies that you're managing every day, it was quite a unique situation. Yeah.
Well, like you say, just that, more so now, I think there is that emphasis on different personalities and different people bringing different stuff to the table. But I suppose those gender, I don't know what you'd call it, gender norms, I suppose, were a bit more prevalent back then, weren't they? So yeah. Okay, cool. So you've been through that. You've been through your DW experience. You've taken the positives and the not so greats from that, and then kind of developed or added that into your style. Just talk to us about what went on from there.
Yeah. So I mean, at DW, I achieved the highest active membership at the end of February. And just kind of felt like nothing was really good enough at the time with the line manager that I was working with. Very, very tough, micromanaged, and made me realise the way that I couldn't bear to be managed, and I didn't want to manage others. I totally understand everybody's got somebody to answer to, but at the time I just felt, you know, probably the lowest point of my life, and that was even taking it when I realised that, taking into consideration football wasn't going to happen. It was a low time, and it was just under a year. And then I started to look for other work because we mutually agreed that it was time to move on. I started to look for other work, and they say everything happens for a reason. I worked then for a company called Sewell's, which are still going today, 55 years of experience in business. They're behavioural change specialists. And you've probably heard this story a few times, but this changed my life personally and professionally, 100%, because you had to go on a course as part of working there called Working Miracles, which was 3 days, and that's 2.5 days, and it costs around about £3,500–4,000 per person. And quite literally, this is where the stuff all around your mindset, how we're in control of our thoughts, etc. I mean, I'm sat around a table as a customer relationship manager in Sewell's with CEOs, COOs, business leaders, and it was just amazing to hear that these people have the same issues you do.
Yeah.
And it just filled me with confidence. I learned so much. I was going into meetings with like the CEOs of Asda and Sainsbury's and Volvo, and I was taking notes primarily. I wasn't a huge part of the meeting, but my God, did I learn so much being a fly on the wall. It's a little bit like football coaches when they're assistant managers or whatever, and they're learning so much off their manager that then when they have a go themselves, they've kind of learned from the best. And Dr. Will Holden is still a mentor of mine today. I follow him all the time and occasionally have a conversation with him. And he was just amazing, taught me so much about my mind, myself, my thoughts, and yeah, just how you can turn everything into a positive, really. Which I must admit, coming out of the football aspect, and like I mentioned earlier, being quite bitter with the world, quite angry, and then to get another knock, being told I wasn't good enough in the industry I was working in. The thing was then, again, after 6 months working at Sewell's, I realised that it wasn't me that had the problem at DW. I was good enough, and I wanted to go back into my passion, what I loved. So it was great being there, but then they gave me the fuel to go, so I wasn't the problem. And I wanted to go back where my passion was, which has always been health and fitness.
Do you think as you're going through that, and you're sat there and you're hearing all of these different individuals with similar concerns or similar areas to work on as yourself, do you think that starts to have you think, well, obviously not just, yes, I am good enough, but it puts things into perspective that have happened over all of those years, and you start to then think, actually, you know what, it's not only me who's in this position, and although I've never had the name of the theory or the name of the model, or I've never actually known that there was a concept built out around this by specialists, all of a sudden those pieces start to fall into place, and you start thinking, well, I'm applying that without ever really having known that there is a model or an approach built around it by these specialists. Is that something that you started to get those light bulb moments a little bit?
100%, because then you can then use the correct terminology.
Yeah.
The learnings, the Johari window, the growth mindset, whatever it might be, all of a sudden then you can relate and resonate back with. And, you know, with my clients, what I tend to do is you've got to make sure it's not about you for a start, but people I'm working with and coaching now, I have to make sure, obviously, that it's all about them, and that's important. But all the time when they're talking, I'll go back and say, I remember that with football. In my mind, I remember that at DW. I remember that with Sewell's. I remember that light bulb moment. So when you're able to not only resonate with the learning and the models that we use, but you can then understand those people, I think it just helps you to resonate with people. And again, you know, I don't struggle to, if I'm having an initial breakthrough call with somebody, to find out what it is they're approaching me for now, or if it's work related with Pure Gym, for example, I can always go back and remember, even if it was a dark time, yeah, I can resonate with this individual because I've been there.
I think that's transferable, most definitely. Martin's favourite word, just chucking that in there. But I think that's definitely transferable to the personal trainers that we work with, isn't it? Because there's almost a perception that you have to be this perfect person all the time, and no one's ever made a mistake, no one ever cheats on their diet, which is a phrase that drives me nuts. But there's all of these sorts of things that people tend to perceive, that there's others out there that have never faced adversity or never had to get over obstacles or never made a mistake, and when in actual fact they're probably the biggest things that you learn from, aren't they? And being able to not only just talk on that, but have the empathy off the back of it to understand truly what that person's going through from any aspect of coaching, whether it is personal training, coaching, lifestyle coaching, football coaching, however that may look, has surely got to be one of the things that are most paramount if you want to go and genuinely help that individual in front of you, right?
100%. I mean, you're learning every single day, you know, even people who call themselves, you look on LinkedIn and, you know, a lot of the titles are experts. They're still learning.
Yeah.
They're still learning. They can call themselves an expert There's a new saying in my world with what I do now called a knowledge broker, where people are calling themselves knowledge brokers to stand out from a crowd of a personal development coach or a life coach or whatever. I've made mistakes since I've had this business. I've changed my website 3 times. I've almost fallen into guiding somebody into an answer when that's not the right way. You constantly, you're making mistakes, but it's that saying, isn't it, that we're learning and not failing, and that's the big thing for me. But 100%, and I think also what you've just touched on there is that you've got to have that resilience about you. And I think this might be a little bit controversial because I believe there are people out there who haven't played sport and are resilient, but the amount of people I've come across whose mindsets and who, if something doesn't quite go right, they're mentally so much stronger because they've either been used to competition, they've taken knocks, they've been told that something isn't quite good enough in a way which is quite clear, shall we say, words that won't be good for this chat today. But yeah, and I think if you come out of that honesty and somebody's been that honest with you, all of a sudden, if things go wrong or don't quite go as they plan, you've been over it that many times, you'll come through it. And it just gives you that almost self-belief, if you like, a little bit more, where you're going to face them again. We're going to face other bumps in the road again in the future. It's how you deal with them that's key. Yeah,
and again, obviously, highlight reels, and you do look at other people that maybe are mentors or not necessarily direct mentors, but people that inspire you. And you do tend to sit there and say, surely they've never been through this. But, both of you know already that a big person of mine that I've followed over the years is Winston Churchill. And if you actually look at his career and what he went through early on, and the amount of, for want of a better word, mistakes that he made in decision making, there's a lot that's in there. And there's a lot of people that would look at him in a fashion that wouldn't necessarily be positive. But then after all of that, he's the one person that he's put in this seat to address what some will say is the biggest evil that we ever faced. And there's a reason that he was prepared to be able to do that. And that was because of all of those experiences he'd been through.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's amazing to hear about. So coaching is a big thing for you, isn't it, currently now? And that's something that you spend a lot of time working with. But just before we go into that a little bit further, I think it'd be really, really great for not just for us, but for the listeners to hear about your experiences of working abroad and what you took from that, if we could.
Yeah, so wow, went out to Dubai in what would have been, I think, 2009, 2010. So after Sewell's, I was about 28, 29. And I just thought, you know what, why not? I remember, I think it was leisure jobs where the emails come through and it's just said, general manager, the rest of the world. So I'm thinking, the rest of the world? So anyway, I find out a little bit more. I thought, let's apply, find out a little bit more. And it was the United Arab Emirates as a general manager with Fitness First. So I had a Skype interview, which went well, another phone call interview a couple of days later. And then I remember having to go to the Hilton in London on a 19th of December. It was freezing cold. I had sciatica in my back. I couldn't put my own socks and shoes on. My mum had to tie my shoes for me from trying to lift heavy weights And I remember I got on this train from Chester to Crewe and Crewe to Houston. And the train was late. It stopped and I had to call him to say, So I just thought, this isn't meant to be. Anyway, I got there. Had a coffee with the guy. I was there for about an hour and a half. And I got the job about a month later, had a party with all my friends, went out to Dubai with 800 quid in a suitcase. And I came back 3 years later. So,
Must have been a big suitcase then, that.
Yeah, shorts and a pair of sunglasses. I think that was all I needed. But yeah, wow. I mean, crazy time. I'll never forget landing there. They put you in a hotel for two to 3 weeks until you found an apartment or wherever it was you were looking for. They paid for your flight, which was brilliant, and they really looked after you when you got there, to be fair. My God, I just remember being driven through and thinking, this is it. This is, I'm going to really go for it out here. And I remember people before I went out there telling me how it'll be amazing for your career. people, showing how ambitious you are and that kind of thing. And so it kind of all just ticked the boxes. I thought, if I don't do it now, I was on my own. I had no dependents as such. And I thought, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And yeah, wow, it was an experience. 6-day weeks, 12-hour days. You usually had a Friday or a Saturday off. Fridays tends to be obviously prayer day. And whichever one you wanted to have, or it could have been a Sunday that occasionally you might have off, but it was a 6-day week. The grind out there is real. It's so real, it's unbelievable. And I arrived remembering that I didn't have a club to go into, and before I went out there, they told me there's one waiting for you. So I was literally a little bit like our bench that we use now. I was passed from pillar to post, and quite frustrated in the first 3-4 months. But I was getting paid. I was in the sun. The cocktails weren't bad either, so it wasn't too much of an issue. But then I was given a pre-sale, and I was given a pre-sale bang in the middle of Ramadan. So I literally every day had to have my lunch in a toilet cubicle with cockroaches crawling up my legs, my shoes, every single day. It felt like I'm a celebrity. Honestly, a cockroach sandwich isn't nice, trust me. So yeah, that was interesting. That was really interesting. Obviously, having to sell from the middle of a mall, which was absolutely dead in the day due to Ramadan, but you needed to be there at 8-9 o'clock, and then it only came alive at 7 o'clock once people had their iftar and eaten and finished. Then they'd come and see you, and you wouldn't get out of there till 10-11 at night. And your pre-sale, as we know, is every day. There's no day off. So, oh man, yeah, talk about putting the hours in and the graft. Fitness First dressed us in black as well, in 55 degree heat, which was nice. And so that was warm. Yeah. But yeah, what amazing experience. The culture, obviously, all the cultures. I mean, it was so cosmopolitan. It was crazy. I remember the first person I went out to try and sell a membership to was a local lady, and I went to shake her hand. And then I all of a sudden had a load of local fellas staring at me as if to say, what are you doing? So quickly had to educate myself on that aspect. But my God, what an experience, a beautiful country. And yeah, very, very interesting, the things I learned out there. But managed to take all that stuff from schools that I'd learned, behavioural wise, out there, and the results I managed to get through my people was just unbelievable. I just felt like a different guy.
Yeah. So I was going to say that along with like how much that would be a character building. I can't even imagine going there and then building your character that much, and then helping. How would that help with the mindset of your vision and your journey going forward?
Oh, mate, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I'm out there in a country, I don't know anybody. I don't know any of the team. You're very quickly having to use your skills and build relationships. Fortunately, people had been out there for years prior, so they knew how you were feeling. Didn't know where to choose to live. Made a mistake in my first year and had to move further into the desert. In my second year, had much more for my money with my apartment, my own pool, stuff like that, which I didn't realize. And then I'm in this tiny little box in the area where most expats were, but I was getting nothing for my money. And so just little things like that, where you just didn't realize or understand the way of life. Trying to get a driving license, I had to have an eye test 3 times. And I had to buy a pair of glasses, which I've never ever worn since, to drive. I had to go back 3 times because they weren't happy with the passport, and it was just crazy times. But yeah, character building was huge. I mean, if you could go out there and do that, I kind of said to myself, there isn't much to stop me in life, really. And I managed to build some fantastic relationships out there, some great friends that I've still got, and thank Facebook and stuff like that for that, really, to keep in touch. But yeah, an amazing experience. It also had its challenges.
That was when you first started to get a taste for multi-site management as well, wasn't it, over the sea?
Yeah, so 2 to 3 pre-sales in Fitness First later. that was a great experience. Then I was approached and headhunted, which was a really nice feeling, by a local Arabic company called Lean Consulting. And they had 3 different parts of the business. And I was heading up Lean Fitness Facility Management, where they've just basically said, choose what job title you want. You're heading this up for us. This is the concept that we're looking to work towards, which, again, now this was a game changer for me. Not only was I multi-site managing, I was actually having to go out and find these projects and offer our consultancy at 30 years of age to local Arabic owners with huge amounts of money, with no idea how to implement it through business. And so me at 29, 30, calling myself a consultant, actually had to learn quite a lot on the job at the time. But managed to scale it up to around about 6 projects, recruit 6 GMs for all of those sites, and as well implement all the systems, policies, procedures. I mean, it was an unbelievable time. The only thing that really pulled me away from that was I came home one Christmas, and unfortunately my old man started to get quite seriously ill. So I think I was there around about 9 months or so. And I came back in the March, but that part I was very, very thankful for, that I'd managed to get that in before I actually came home to the UK. Amazing experience.
And that experience is clearly something that you draw on now with the amount of sites that you've got as you run across, regional manager, 26 sites on the way up. So big, I suppose, skills transfers again from working abroad, and you've almost combined that and found yourself within Pure Gym now. How have you managed to draw on that? What's your sort of your go-tos from each of those experiences with your role now?
I suppose it's just a huge concoction of all. I can't necessarily pinpoint one thing. I think the thing for me that will always remain the same no matter what is people. It's if you've got a real strong, clear vision, which I've shared across my region, and it captures the hearts and minds of your people, they'll rip up trees with their bare hands for you. And I thoroughly believe in that. If you look after them when they need you most, yes, there'll always be an element of challenge in there, especially if things are repeated over and over and over. You know, we've got to remember we're a business at the end of the day, but times have changed. Somebody I admire, which you know, and I follow so much, is I love his style, is Alex Ferguson. However, I believe if Alex Ferguson, for example, was a manager now, I don't think he'd have anywhere near as much success unless he adapted his style. And I was from that era. So although there's still that element of Alex Ferguson that I'd like to think is in there, I don't pull it out as much. I don't need it as much. It's there if it's needed. But for me, I think it's more about, again, capturing the hearts and minds, having a strong vision. We've got a strong set of values and behaviours that we live by. Every single time, if we're needing to correct the behaviour, we use the vision and the values, then the behaviour, usually with the right people, like-minded, that we want in our organisation, will automatically follow.
And do you think that's something, again, you mentioned Saul's being a big part of that. Do you think that element of behavioural change and correction is something that you draw on? Or was that where it started, or how do you think that started to develop?
Yeah, so I mean, Saul's was huge. I'm sat in a meeting with a CEO of a large supermarket who didn't know how to embed a vision and a values in his organisation. And he's saying, we've got problems with this. They're not working hard enough. They don't want to do this. Their attitudes are... And I'm sat there thinking, okay, I'm a young lad. I don't know how to do it right now, but I know Saul's new. And then once I'm listening to this, it just gave me so much confidence that if CEOs, COOs, et cetera, need help and support with this, you know, that just fills you with confidence that actually they don't have the answer to everything. And they're probably, their IQ's higher, but their EQ's lower. Yeah. So when it comes to the emotional intelligence aspect, they lack it a little bit. But they're intelligent enough to realize they lack it. So they'll let somebody who's a specialist in that go and deal with it. So I've just managed to learn an awful lot about that aspect of Souls. And yeah, 100% use an awful lot of my learnings from there in what I do now. It frustrates me still now, you know, people, I think they're starting up a business or starting up something brand new. one, two, three people sit in a room and create a vision and a values. And it's like, how can you do that? You need, one thing with Pure, for example, we pulled in 5, 6, 7, 8 people of all levels, from FC coach in London to AGM to GM to RM to head of L&D to a director, right the way through the organization, to say, what do you believe we need to stand for? When you have CEOs or COOs, 2 people sitting in a room deciding what their people should strive for, you're not going to capture the hearts and minds of others. So I think that was something that was massive for me.
Yeah, it's that inclusion, isn't it, of everyone? Like, how can you all be pulling in the same direction if the other guys haven't been consulted in the direction that we want to pull in, right? But just going back a little bit to Alex, I think the key thing from Alex Ferguson that tends to sit with me is his adaptability to some of the players that he's had. And you both probably heard me talk about it 1,000,001 times, but being able to adapt to that person that sat opposite you and the sort of style that they need from you as a manager can be very different, kind of. I think the story that sits out and jumps out to me is when Lee Sharp was talking about Eric Cantona, and something had happened in a game, and they'd all run in as quickly as they possibly could to get into the changing rooms, thinking this is going to be a good one. The gaffer's going to tear strips off Eric here, and they've walked in, and Ferguson's ripped apart a couple of the players in there, and then he's turned to Cantona and he's just gone, "You can't do that, Eric," because they're completely different personalities, aren't they? And he's realised that, and he's understood that. And there's not that you want to treat people differently or unfairly, but certain people, certain characters will need a different approach for you to get the best out of them, almost.
I think it's the understanding, isn't it? So, like, and I think that for me, with support and coaching, is finding that level of understanding will then help, because the reason why Alex Ferguson did that with Eric Cantona is because he understood the individual that he was dealing with. Yeah. And that's why people do have to be treated differently, but there has to be a vision that everybody's striving to together, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Which is something that me and Dan harp on about, well, all the time, and just listening to your story and what you've, like, the journey that you've been on and stuff, it's just refreshing to hear that some more people experience that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then again, if you're getting technical and you go down that route, again, whether Alex Ferguson knew or not, and leaders like him knew or not, it's all emotional intelligence. And I personally believe in the workplace right now, this is probably 85% of what we need to master. The 4 pillars, relationship management is what we're talking about there with Cantona. And I think it was Ryan Giggs that was a bit peeved because he ripped into Giggsy and Giggsy went, "Hold on a minute, Eric's just done X, Y, Z." And I think that was his essential, his key was that with Alex Ferguson was, if I go and rip into Eric, you'll probably hand in a transfer request tomorrow. And so, that developing and maintaining amazing relationships as one of your pillars of the 4 pillars of emotional intelligence is what Ferguson seemed to be absolutely amazing at. Albeit quite tough and hard and strict at times, he knew probably the right people to be either put his arm round or give him a kick up the backside, and he'll get that right reaction. Yeah,
100%. So that's something that is clearly prevalent in how you approach the people that almost you're their line manager. You've now moved into coaching and starting to work with clients that are setting up their own businesses or want to unlock their potential in whatever sense that might be, whether that's in a career path for an organisation or a company or in their own right. How have you found that? Is it more so drawing on your experiences, or how does that work? How does that look? How's it all going?
Yeah, so we focus primarily on 3 key areas, which is relationships. So, whether that's relationship building in the workplace, whether it's with friends, family, whatever it might be, a partner, or whether it's even that you're struggling to build them or find them. Personal development, which, yes, it homes in naturally around mindset, but it can focus on any aspect of your life, whether it's finance, self-confidence, generally having fun and finding time, whether it's health, new business startups. And then the other one is embedding and supporting and helping organisations with vision, values and culture. And so quite a diverse three, but we're able to branch off and split those up quite easily and communicate that. And yeah, it's felt quite natural. I think because I've had such a long time from experiencing the magic that I learned at Sewell's, the background and the discipline from a football perspective with Blackburn Rovers, I've had so much time to put those theories into practice that I felt like now was the right time to share my knowledge. I wouldn't call myself a knowledge broker, but I do believe, I mean, my vision for my company is empowering people to have more purposeful lives. And if I can do that and impact people through positive mindset transformation, then I know that the methods I use work. I'm getting some great results for people. And ultimately, I'm taking people from their present state to a desired state. And once I've found out what that looks like for them, they just need to take action. I sometimes have people come to me, and I mentioned it on last week's live. They sometimes come to me and say, I need you to fix me, and I need you to help with this, and I need you to do this. I'm not doing anything for you. It's you that's got to take the action. It's a little bit like PT, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, if you're going to take a client into the gym and you're going to say, right, we're going to add 5 kg on your squat today, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to lift it. They might tell you that, you know what, I can't do it and I'm not choosing to. Well, I give them the tools to be able to change, but they've got to take the action. So I hold them accountable through the week. I check in with them through the week. And then hopefully by the end of the week on our next session, they've done those 3, 4, 5 actions that will take them forward, ready for next week.
Yeah, that's something we talk about on the foundations course, isn't it? As a model, the bridge model, in terms of getting people to identify their desired state and then really be open and honest with their present state, so that we can make those steps and that transition. And it 100% transfers into the environment, and with the guys that we work with, the PTs that we work with, it's there. And it's no surprise really that sort of theory transfers into other areas. Would you say, so this is I kind of know where I sit on this, and I find it an interesting question, and to both of you, to be fair, would you say that coaching is a natural ability, or more so something that's a polished skill, or a blend of the two? Or what's your thoughts on that?
For me, we're conditioned from a young age. You know, if we look at fears, we're born with 2 fears, which is falling and loud noises. You're not born with another fear in life. Are you born a coach? No. You have to be conditioned. It's why we follow, you know, for example, Elvis Presley's daughter has a career in singing, or has tried to have a career in singing. Would she have tried that if Elvis wasn't her father? Probably not. And I think it all determines, it's around the people that you are around. You know, Brian Clough, Nigel Clough, would he have been a footballer? Who knows? So, and it's the same in everything, isn't it? If you're generally around, if you've got positive parents, positive people around you, etc., the chances are you're going to be positive. So some people might have more natural tendencies and take to that quicker. But for me, I think this is why people self-educate so much, to get more out of people. I don't necessarily believe that otherwise it would probably mean that we'd struggle to change an awful lot more. So that's my opinion. I believe the mind's such a powerful tool that it can change. When you look into things like neuroplasticity, there's this thing that you can't change your mind once you get a certain age. Well, you can change it any age of your life. But I believe we're conditioned from a young age.
Yeah, I think it's because we hear that quite a lot, or I've spent time with people, and you do tend to hear, that's just not me, that's just not my style, I'm never going to be able to do that, or it seems natural to you, is something that I've heard a lot. But I genuinely do believe it's that practice, and it's that understanding, and starting to sit there and think, right, maybe I don't need to talk all of the time, or maybe if I just take half a second before I give you an answer, or have a little bit of, we talk about triggers quite a lot, don't we? So if I have that trigger, or something that's going to set me off to not go all in with my opinion, instead start to ask those questions to hear the advice of or the thoughts of the other person opposite you. I think that's quite a big thing, but it's interesting to hear that conditioned, how you talk about people being conditioned from such a young age. I'm sitting here now trying to think back to how it's worked with my parents over the years, and why it seems maybe to others that it's a little bit more natural. To me, I'm not quite sure. That's probably what I'll spend the rest of the day thinking about, to be fair.
Well, there was a story that I remember. When you're thinking about stories like the Roger Bannister one I love, I always share it. I shared it yesterday, of the power of belief and how everybody told him he wouldn't survive if he ran a mile under 4 minutes. And then he goes and does it. It gets broke 30 odd times in the same year, because everybody else started to believe it. We're conditioned. If you think about, you're a 3-year-old kid, you get pulled out of the bath after having a bath by your mum or your dad, and a spider, as they're drying you off, a spider crawls across the floor and your mum screams. You're then conditioned to believe that spider's going to hurt you. You weren't born with it, but your mum's just made you afraid of spiders for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And then trying to retrain your brain to get out of what I call a black hole back here, where you're trying to get yourself out of that mindset, is the challenge. But that's where kind of I come in to help people who have those limiting beliefs, or they've got a certain mindset, they've been conditioned, built over time with interactions with people, circumstances, and it kind of stops people from wanting to progress. Imagine going through your life only tapping into 35% of your potential, and then before you know it, you're 6 foot under. It's quite a scary thought, and I know I want to tap into mine more.
Yeah, we touched on it. I think you can use that as a bit of motivation. We mentioned it on a podcast recently in terms of that, like, you are going to die at some point. I think a lot of people can see that as a phrase that could be quite morbid or quite scary, but it's motivation. Like,
reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's finite. The amount of time we spend on this earth in this shape or this form, depending on what your beliefs are, is finite. So why not get the most out of it while you can, and really take each day by the horns and drive forwards. I think that black hole concept is interesting. I know we've spoken about it with myself beforehand. Do you think it's necessarily, I don't want to use the word easy, but in terms of identifying what that issue is or where that comes from, can that take quite a bit of time, do you think? Or is it something that, because it's going to need quite a lot of self-awareness, isn't it, to get to that point? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so I have what's called breakthrough calls with people to find out, first of all, if we can work together. So I suppose it's the equivalent of a consultation from a PT perspective, because if you're the type of person that, isn't like-minded or open-minded, I think that's the big one with what I do, is open-minded. If they're not open-minded and they're so stubborn and in their ways that they believe that it can't change, or they're not willing to do X, Y, Z, they're not willing to be self-aware, then we're probably not right for each other. And unfortunately, that person's going to leave that call, unless I've done a really bad job. They're going to leave that call probably doing exactly that. Then they're not going to ever remove that barrier or limiting belief, whatever it might be. So that's essential for me. The open-mindedness is essential. It's one of the very first questions I will ask somebody when I have that breakthrough call is, are you open-minded, and how much do you really want to achieve your desired state? And then once that happens, then I know that we're on to a winner, and we'll move forward with the call. And then it's all about rapport building, being empathetic, understanding, listening, which is a massive skill that a lot of people don't have, but being able to just listen. And sometimes, as we all know, it's that one where you want to speak, but if you just be quiet another 30 seconds or 10 seconds, the awkward silence will make them say a little bit more. And usually when I do that, it's uncomfortable. And sometimes if it's not a video call, I'm sat there cringing a little bit, but eventually they'll come out with that golden nugget that you need to find out. But in answer to your question, there's a series of processes and questions that I tend to go through. After 1 hour session with some people, they've been that open and in tune with themselves that straight away, I'm able to hook in and go, right, I understand what we need to focus on here. It's imposter syndrome that we've got, whatever it might be. In some areas, it might take me a week or two. And whichever way, we just go at their pace, basically. It's just important to find the right roadmap for those people.
Again, similar, just relating that into PT. very similar to a client, right? Like it's going to take that listening and take you actually understanding, but not just listening. I think listening is something that is very, very important, but active listening is very different. So it's okay sitting there and not speaking and having people talk, but actively listening and taking on board what they say, and at times repeating back so you can get a further understanding is really a key skill. And in those consultations, or in your case, those breakthrough calls, for you to actually genuinely help the person sat opposite you, you've got to be able to do that, haven't you? Otherwise, it's just almost ticking the box for the sake of ticking the box, and you're never going to get the solution or actually do what you're there to do, which is help that individual, isn't it?
100%. And if there was ever anything I could offer, whether it's a PT, a coach, or anything that's worked for me, is paraphrasing. Because that way, not only if you get yourself into the habit of paraphrasing, you're straight away sending them a message that you're nodding, you're saying yes, you understand, and at the same time they're right, this guy's listening to me, and you're forcing your mind yourself into saying the thing back. And what does that mean to you? If you say it out loud yourself, you're actually making yourself think, you know what, I get this person, and you can empathize even more.
Yeah, amazing. So really, really great to hear some of that stuff. I could probably sit here and speak about it all day. You know me, I love it. So really, really intriguing, really, really interesting. We are going to finish up there, but we have, before we shoot off, got some exciting questions and a bit of fun questions at the end for you. So what should we go with, Mark? Have you got your first one over there, mate?
You do the first one, mate.
Okay, so you've got your dinner party. Running a dinner party, you've got 3 guests come in. They can be alive or past. For any reason that you can possibly think of, who would your 3 top guests be to come along to your dinner party, and why?
Alex Ferguson.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. Albert Einstein.
Same birthday as me, by the way, Albert Einstein.
Really?
Same. Yeah, not same hairstyle, but same birthday.
And I'd also go with Princess Diana.
Good shout, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why those last 2? So we spoke about Sir Alex quite a bit there. Why those other 2?
Albert Einstein, obviously, just to pick his brain. I mean, if you got an opportunity for a couple of hours to ask questions, and who knows what will evolve from the conversation. You've got another mastermind in Ferguson. I mean, just around that table there, completely different individuals and people. But I'm kind of thinking about the helicopter view of the dinner here, Dan, rather than just individuals. But yeah, the questions and his thought process, and it would just be amazing, wouldn't it? Princess Diana, somebody I admired, and I'll never ever forget. I was when I found out the news. I was in the back of my mum and dad's car travelling down the M6 on the way to Blackburn Rovers to play against Joe Cole for the first time, which really stuck in my mind, because I remember going into the game. I didn't think it had impacted me as a young lad, but when I saw my mum's reaction and how shocked she was and upset she was on the car, probably on the way to playing your biggest game, obviously, if you see your parents at any point getting upset over something, it's big. I didn't realise how big it was at the time, but then, it kind of probably affected me a little bit going in, and that always stayed with me. And I've watched the interviews when she was very honest and open, and I would just love to know the truth.
Yeah, that would be interesting to hear, wouldn't it? In terms of the, for want of a better word, secrets behind it all, if there are any.
That's it.
Great series, that, by the way, The Crown. If you've never watched it, I know that sounds like something I wouldn't watch, but it definitely is. It was a good watch, to be fair. Whether they end up going down that route and looking at that time frame, I don't know. But yeah, really interesting series. I can tell both of you looking at me now like I'm never going to watch that in a minute.
Because they won't go down that route. That's fine.
Yeah, to be fair. Cool. Next one.
So I'm gonna go with we'll go with, you're on a desert island, stranded, one album only. What are you taking?
Stumped a few people, this one.
Michael Jackson, Bad.
Good shout, that. Good shout. I'm not going to moonwalk on camera either, but next time I see you, I'll show you.
He can break dance, to be fair to him. Is he showing you?
I haven't. Wait, that next night out is going to be an interesting one now, isn't it? No pressure.
Forget the night out, it'll be a meeting.
Just clear the tables and put it straight in the middle. Fair play. Okay. So you've done your dinner party. You've got your album that you're taking to your desert island. If you were to serve 3 meals to those dinner guests, doesn't necessarily have to be what you can cook, but if you were to serve 3 courses, what would they be?
Starter would have to be probably tiger prawns.
Okay.
I do enjoy a large prawn. Main would be nasi goreng.
Okay. Different.
Yeah. Got to be a fried egg on top though. You can't have it without, it ruins it. And then I do love a little slice of cheeky cheesecake.
Cheesecake's been a big winner that so far. What cheesecake?
What type of cheesecake is it?
Oh, I'm going to disappoint you because I'd either have strawberry or just plain vanilla. I just like it as it is with the biscuit.
Yeah. I'm the same. New York cheesecake, just a big slab of that'll do me.
That's it, mate. Yeah, I've got you on that one.
Do you have anything with it?
No, apart from a glass of wine. That would be
Decent.
it.
That's right. We had last night actually. We had a salted caramel cheesecake with vanilla ice cream. It was unreal.
Can't beat that.
Good.
I had an apple, mate.
Yeah, can tell who's tracking this week, can't we, mate? Sweet. Okay, cool. Any others from you there, Mark?
No, that's it. Just probably why the Michael Jackson album?
Oh, mate, I used to get caught dancing to it, moonwalking, doing all sorts by my mum and dad when I thought the curtains were closed, because I used to live in a bungalow, so there was no escape. And I used to get caught singing and dancing to my imaginary crowd. I just used to love him, I think. I know people have tried to get close, like Justin Timberlake and people like that, but for me, I know he's a controversial character and people have said X, Y, Z, but the best entertainer for me ever.
Yeah.
And I liked his music. Man in the Mirror, what is unbelievable song.
I tell you what's crazy. My 8-year-old daughter, I had to was it 2 weeks ago? I had to tell her and show her who he was. She didn't know who he was.
Oh, it's crazy.
Didn't have a clue.
Lacey loves him. Our eldest, she absolutely loves him.
I listened to one of your podcasts recently. That was about DVDs. Now they haven't got a clue. Oh,
yeah.
Man, just like, wow, how old do you feel? So,
yeah. Well, it's just a sign of the times. But I think even then, probably taking it a bit being a bit more serious on it. I think that it's amazing to hear because the generations that are coming, like you do hear a lot where the old, like my mum says it about our little ones all the time about, like, you know, they're on YouTube, they're on iPads, they're on this, they're on that, but that's the future, isn't it? And from a business point of view, we're going to have to embrace that because that's where business is going to be done. And that's where all of this technology is going to come in and allow people to get the results that they want to get from a business point of view in future. And
even more with COVID-19, it's just brought us forward 5-10 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Amazing. So yeah, again, thanks for jumping on. It's been really, really great to have you on. Been really, really fun and intriguing to hear your story and your experiences and how you've now applied that. And as always, coaching is a massive, massive focus for us as part of this podcast in terms of integrating that into business. So for the listeners, if you do want to subscribe and listen to what we have coming up and all the episodes that we have, please do click on the link below and that will update you every time an episode is released. Other than that, we shall see you next time. Thanks again for jumping on and listening, guys, and have a fantastic day. See you all soon.